TV, promotion, population, promoting our culture, promoting our tradition.
Member of the African Union, as well as the right of Gambian citizens, especially women, to choose how they are governed. In essence, it's our position that this undue influence and questionable interference, however well intended, from donor countries and Western NGOs directly and indirectly pressuring National Assembly members goes against the Constitution of the Gambia, the sovereignty of this country, and the duty of the government to represent and serve its people. Second objective is to call the National Assembly members' attention back to what should be at issue here, which is the evidence base, or what I would say the lack thereof, regarding assumptions and allegations made by anti-FGM activists about the supposed life-threatening harms of female circumcision as practiced in the Gambia, and the supposed sexual oppression or subjugation of women through this practice. And this is very disturbing because there are real issues that are affecting Gambian women: maternal mortality, right? Teenage pregnancy, a lot of issues that are affecting Gambian women, and the exaggeration of the health risks and outcomes for women with female circumcision really, I think, in a sense, takes away attention from the problems that women are suffering from here in the Gambia. So we want to be able to ask the National Assembly members to focus on the evidence. And when I say evidence, I'm not just talking about the anecdotal evidence, so to speak, what one doctor may say or another doctor may say. We're talking about scientific studies. Anti-FGM activists have had over 50 years to be able to come up with sufficient evidence, medical evidence, scientific evidence, with control groups to show what these health risks are and the prevalence of these health risks, and how circumcised women somehow are worse off than uncircumcised women. We know here in the Gambia, through studies such as one that was done by the MRC several years ago, I believe it was in 2000, that this is not true. And in this study, where circumcised and uncircumcised women were compared, there was very little difference that was found in terms of health outcomes for both groups. These studies you can find. I will make them available to you, journalists, when you at the end of the session. You can find them on my website, but they're also, you can Google them as well and be able to locate them there. So again, we know that for decades, the FGM industry has used back to the press, the mainstream press, the local African media, to suppress research and important facts, scientific and medical evidence that contradict the FGM meta-narrative. That is what activists say all the time about FGM. Muslim women, and the vast majority of affected women, that is circumcised women in the Gambia, their experiences, or I should say our experiences, do not fit this stereotype of mutilation. And the continual use of this term female genital mutilation, just the term itself, because it's the thing is that it continues to be repeated in the media: mutilation, mutilation, mutilation. And so the impression is that women are being destroyed, sexually destroyed, that women are being harmed, that women are dying. I have done several interviews in the past where I have asked activists to show me where the evidence is that women and girls are dying of female circumcision, and it has never been presented, right? So there's a term that I use, which is called FGM gaslighting. This is telling African women lies about our own bodies, lies about our sexuality, lies about our, excuse me for being graphic, but our genitalia. For instance, when they say, oh, the entire clitoris is removed from a woman, there is no female circumcision procedure in the world where the entire clitoris of a woman is removed. You would kill a woman or a girl if that should happen. Right. So this is a kind of misinformation, or as I say, gaslighting, that they are presenting to women. And young adolescent girls are very vulnerable to believe these myths about themselves. Young girls now are thinking that they're never going to be able to enjoy sex. They're never going to be able to enjoy their marriage, their marital homes, because they have been somehow sexually mutilated. This is wrong. The idea that we don't have agency as African women, meaning we can't say no. If we see that women are dying in our communities, if we see that girls, our own daughters that we gave birth to, are dying or they're suffering, that we can't say no to this tradition, this is outrageous. African women would not continue a tradition that is harmful to themselves, to ourselves, and to our daughters. Then there's the idea that this gaslighting term extends to ideas about the role of patriarchy. That's a heavy word. I'm not going to try and dissect it here, but basically male domination, right? That this practice happens because women are controlled by men, that men, for some reason, right? Imagine what is being said by men, that African men are so barbaric that they do not want their wives to experience pleasure, that they would condone something that is, completely barbaric on their own daughters. So the idea that this is happening because of men, and of course, Islam is used as an example to show that women are subjugated, women are oppressed. When you look at the press and they're referring to Muslim women, usually they only show men, right? They will show pictures of Muslim men, and you don't see the women, which gives the impression that women cannot even speak and that women have no say in this. And again, this is a complete myth. In Africa, it's women who control this practice. Just like it's men who control male circumcision, women control and manage female circumcision and initiation traditions. So the media in general, I'm not talking about specific journalists, have failed to investigate the wealth of information and literature that contradicts the myths. I call them myths that are propagated by FGM activists. I want to suggest for you to have a look at a particular paper. It's a public policy advisory paper entitled 7 Things to Know About Female Genital Surgeries in Africa. And this was authored by a group of international scholars, physicians, and human rights experts, feminists. Professor Moore is a part of that group. I myself has been a part of that group. Very eminent scholars in the field who surveyed the entire literature, the existing literature on female circumcision and circumcision. And we were able to critique what the standard tale is, right? And show that these myths are not true. The 7 facts, I won't go through all 7, but I'll just highlight the 4. I've alluded to some, but the first idea is that women who are circumcised, who have undergone circumcision, again, excuse my directness, but do not enjoy sex and do not have orgasms. This is not true. And the evidence is there in the literature. Studies that have been done with women over and over again throughout Africa indicate very clearly that this is not true. I also point to my own experience. I was an adult woman at the time that I underwent this practice. Nothing like that ever happened to me. So, and I know that my experience is not unique, that circumcised women, uncircumcised women, it depends on your situation, it depends on your partner, it depends on so many different things. So we are really teaching young girls and women wrong information about their bodies and their sexuality. The health hazards. We hear all the time, women are dying, girls are dying, women are being maimed. More boys die or maimed from male circumcision worldwide than girls, than females, right? Women right? And that's not to say that I'm against, male circumcision, but if we're looking at deaths and morbidity from circumcision, we need to be concerned about male circumcision. But why aren't we concerned about male circumcision? Because these anti-FGM activists would never go after men and tell them to end their practice, because they respect men, because they know that men, they respect the fact that men have that autonomy and can decide for themselves, but they do not respect African and Muslim women. That is a problem. So again, this document, ladies and gentlemen, I will ask that you look at to get the specific references that I'm alluding to. Again, the patriarchy argument, the idea that this practice is done because of men. It fails to consider that wherever female circumcision is practiced, male circumcision is practiced. The two practices are complementary. I did my entire PhD thesis in trying to understand why the practice is complementary, and it's about ideals about gender and marriage, male and female, husband and wife, the complementarity of that. So I think at the core of that, because those are the core reasons behind the justification of the practice, this is what maybe Western feminists are against. Again, that related to patriarchy, the idea that it's men controlling women and women doing this because they have no choice, because they are trapped by culture, a barbaric custom. Somehow we don't know what we are doing. Women are uneducated, women are illiterate. My mother was very well educated and a practicing nurse, and was still excited for me to be initiated in circumcision. So it's a myth. In Sierra Leone, many women, not most, but many women who uphold the practice are very articulate, very well educated, and as far as I know, that is why it is impossible to pass a law in Sierra Leone against the practice, because of the power and the education of women at the very top. So these are some of the myths that were highlighted in this paper that I'm referring to you, that I'm referring you to look up. The public policy advisory is being updated currently to focus more on the harms of exactly what we are talking about now, the criminalization of so-called FGM, and how that impacts individual women as well as communities. As I mentioned, Professor Rogers is studying the impact of this on an Indian Muslim community in Australia. But here in the Gambia, who's being affected by this? Supposedly this practice is supposed to be, is men forcing women to do this, but who are the people that are being chased after? Who are the people that are being locked up? It's women, right? And usually these are women who do not have access to resources, for example, the ones in the Gambia, and who cannot defend themselves. Right now, my organization in the Gambia has spent thousands of dollars defending a community and women within that community that were arrested under false allegations of committing FGM. So it's women, again, who are paying the price for this criminalization. We believe that this information is very important for the Gambian public. Aside from male circumcision, as I mentioned before, there are other practices, genital practices in other countries, such as female genital cosmetic surgeries, intersex surgery. I won't define what all of this is, but you can look them up. Intersex surgery, transgender surgery, penile and clitoral piercing, so many different things that people across the world in a wide range of communities do to their genitalia. But for some reason, anti-FGM activists seem to be fixated on the bodies of African and Muslim women. We believe that the Gambian public is entitled to know information about what is going on in the rest of the world, what kinds of genital practices are taking place in the rest of the world, so that we understand that we are not unique, that we're not unique in this, and that we are, in effect, being singled out and being discriminated against. And so we have a right as women, as knowledgeable women, as women leaders in our communities, as mothers, to stand up and say, no, we're not going to be discriminated against. We're entitled to know that our views and experiences are affirmed, reaffirmed through the research and medical and scientific evidence. And the last thing I want to discuss is the issue of representation. Who has the legal, moral, and actual right to represent the views of the multitude of Gambian women? Who has the right to decide what it constitutes a subjugation for women? Who has a right to make these decisions for us? The way that things are going here in the Gambia right now, it seems are given that privilege. The Gambian women themselves, like the women sitting around this room, are deemed not capable of making up their own minds about their bodies. That, I think, is absolutely wrong. And our organization, of course, we're here to amplify the voices of the vast majority of grassroots women. I mentioned Jaha Dukure earlier when I opened up. And it's not something that I'm happy to do. In fact, everything within me is reluctant to do that. Through the years, I know that there have been women in our communities who have benefited, if you will, from anti-FGM campaigns, anti-FGM activism. There are many, many, many women, some were even referred to me in America, who needed asylum. They needed to stay in the United States or in European countries. And obviously they would face problems if they came back to their countries of origin, economically, financially. So this was a way out for them. And this is why I could not criticize many of these women for using the FGM terminology and excuse as a way to stay in Western countries. That is survival, not justifying it, but I can understand it as a means of survival. Then there are women who, in a way, I think undermine the efforts of sincere women who have opposed this practice. And I'll talk about them in a moment. There are women who have been very strategic. They know that by making themselves appear, that they can get a public, global public platform. They can also get access to resources. So many things. And unfortunately, I believe that Jaha Dukure fits in that category. I had spoken to her personally. There was a time after I did an interview with the BBC, and she actually called me. And she said to me at that time, look, I don't know what you think about us. And I think when she said us, she was referring to young FGM activists. We are not stupid. We know exactly what we're doing. If white women want to believe that we are victims, if white women want to believe this about us, why not play them? Why not go ahead and play the role until we get what we want? And her justification was that once she gets her platform, she will then do something that is going to be of help to women in the community. But here's the problem that I have with Jaha's story. Number one, her ethnicity. She is a Soninke, as far as I know. And from my research and from my talking to many, many women here on the ground, there is no such thing. She claims that she was infibulated. That means as an infant, because the Soninkes normally circumcise young girls and boys during infancy. She claims that as an infant, she was infibulated. Not only was her external genitalia removed, but she was sewn up completely. That procedure, first of all, is impossible to perform on an infant without killing that infant. Secondly, the Soninkes do not practice that. Infibulation when and if it happens in the Gambia is extremely rare, and it is usually imported from other immigrant communities. But the Soninke and the vast majority of practitioners in the Gambia do not practice infibulation. So she's lying about that procedure. It didn't happen. When I confronted her about that and asked her about that, she admitted to me that she didn't know what procedure she had. Right? When I told her but it's not possible for you to have had this, she admitted that she didn't know what procedure she had. And then again, I explained to her that the Soninke do a very minor nick during infancy for both girls and boys. And then to help her out, I said, but there are some groups that do a process called sealing when a girl is about 4 or 5. And that's when Jaha said, oh, yes, sealing. And then all of a sudden now, she's telling new reporters that she had sealing. She also admitted to me in the same conversation that she had labiaplasty in Atlanta. Labiaplasty is a female genital cosmetic procedure that white, educated, wealthy women undergo in America. They call it labiaplasty. They call our own FGM. But she admitted to me that she underwent labiaplasty. Well, if you underwent infibulation as a baby, what remains for you to have this labiaplasty? So her story is very, very inconsistent. Not only that, there are other aspects of her story that don't add up. But the fact is that she was very direct with me about her intention. She knows very well that she's seeking a global platform. She knows that she's getting financing and that this is who she is, this is her career. And I told her a long time ago that, Jaha, I don't have any problem with you. Number one, don't come to Sierra Leone with any of that. So you haven't seen her anywhere near Sierra Leone. Number two, the minute it starts affecting Gambian women, I will step in and expose what you have said to me. So now it is affecting Gambian women. Gambian women are she's advocating for Gambian women to go to prison after lying about her procedure. And we're now expected to hold her as the role model, that her experience represents the experience of Gambian women. And I cannot do that. There's no amount of money in the world that will allow me to sell my mothers and my grandmothers and lie about them. So I think we need to be wary of who we're saying represents Gambian women when it comes to female circumcision. Again, the question, you have white female activists like Dr. Cynthia Burrage, I believe her name is, forgive me, Hillary Burrage, who has circulated a petition. Again, she's been very vocal. She's been very active in dismissing the actions of the National Assembly. She's been very derogatory towards the president of the Gambia. And I find this very disturbing. I find this disturbing as a feminist, that she would use such language, and that she, as a white woman who clearly is uncircumcised, is assuming that African women and Muslim women who have undergone circumcision, that we are somehow inferior, or that we are somehow subjects, colonial subjects that need to be guided and instructed. So I'm very concerned about the language that she uses and her methods. Then we have our honorable members of parliament who were duly elected. Yes, they are predominantly male, but as I recall, there were free and fair elections, not so? When you all were voted into power. These are the individuals who have been voted in to represent women in their communities. Not only that, I believe when the ban was voted for in 2015, 2016, it was a predominantly male parliament. So why are they now saying that the only reason why there is a bill to repeal the ban is because of men, right? So we need to be very careful about that. I'm going to end it here because I was really hoping to get questions from journalists. I am happy to answer any questions. I hope we can be able to translate for some of our women who are here joining us. Thank you so much for your patience.
All right, thank you very much, Sia. I thank my representative from Australia and various women. I will just do a short briefing in the local language. Maybe if you have questions before we end our press, then we could also ask Prof. Sia. Generally, comme mbal konton na kal hakilo bulande ko donke na kachamu kule di mela ko bidende musola nyaka totala be nga moyle angale kangola a fonyame adia mo seniat akada musudu mela ko folo ko abodan damen to karannal abama fango mel yalon ko atata wado mena kebe ata a wuluta america a kuluta woto bara bama ya bondinan akoye ko be sammalan na serelion pour ngene londi kol kono ako memme dendi musola nyakaro ku fulalem ito la ado ila chosana nen dino aba sujurun ku fulala walen ko kelin kel tata kelle be marali la kolto ni musol fanan kol tata musol be marali la kolto saka même fo ja walen ko ay diamo bayle ñun nol melan ko yela posol fandi tubabo la ko anin kol kaytende ko ndol gamme musol fa ma nyanto soto pour ka diamo na koto ate men long ay men karang ay menje walen ko musola nyakarota musola kole moti ke buka dunje abuka mabeje kella ko mu kella kote e musu buka dunje abuka mabeje so waytande ko fanyale mi ka même foko atol be toro kono kelle batandiro landal kan kayta albital forcé ay ko mo bayla fulanjam fana me itani walen ko abama mu no solati niyadara ko nyi haramata mambetiya wala kuba koma abama me nosia karang aba fole ko kanata andun sabanya atetatale atarin kola anene man kuzo kayta no ko iteni dia sotla futo kono e ka batale e ka fale akwa mukule di melon ko diam kensen no femman taraje membe danding jerinya la karola tubabo la karola idolo fanan katale bare ka nyandile e ka ko muso nyaata koro pour ka dadaroke ala muso la musia kono so musol tubabo ya nyande tan bare sa ye kangola landol ka melon ko na afre wala gambia muso la nyaata tinyaro lem e ka muso la musia tinyale ako yajele kolbe nyame ito la tubabo ka nyandile ande katala anda baka danje ndol dol men be janna bama nyon na nanyolu anin na ngansimal men kata ibuka ko di jaar ibuka ko di nyini ako bare tuwa buru ta e ka kodol le nyini priye tawoto ne ajay tata rek e ka je he kadija men tata wala na men tata wala nyi men tata he ko di tiolem momo men tata tuwa buru yin kodo ite mo ko di ti balati so ya yitande ko sa nyim pesaro be tende de ndol gambian kolu mbuka ko di nyininka ndol ka ke ado anin ciosano bare tu anina dino bare tuba buruta itelo ko dole nyininga ando ko la fana momo mentata e kam makamo le dilele makamo me yalonko ite mu moleti meyango ila soto kantale ako nyinen ko di melango ala sa puruka ka jaboto pour nga fam nani nyaw fana membe dending aje ko sañ membe diam la musol la koto musol la nyanda ka diam la koto wala activisol melango ye poso dilela kodo ye naye diami la koto ate men je walen ko musol la nyanda ke la musuya diam musol la nyanda ke la koto ando fentije melan ko yende ka musuya la ko fenken so meme den din jaha du kurela akata modi melan ko abe loading ko nyin ko la bake anu ako kabiri diam date interview sur BBC jaha ya ko le kachara nyin koto ako ite men fo ye tinya nyame ila dindi ya wato nte mfuruda Gambia le anu nga Gambia long anu nga la sio fana lolne soninke la sio wala sarahulo la sio nga lonne e ka kanyan andi ni ye dinni wal samba e ke samba comme kila sala sala ya tambini nyame bara sa ite ko ye tinyare sa ni atare ye tinyare wato mena men fo itata ibe dindi yare nden sa muna dai manfa ako hani amanke o nyama so arena da fa ko ndefana nga dole lonko ni tara ike sile wala ike sukule ako aha ntada walla amanda nje ko adafana ntada tubabudu comme nga même fo nyinyande plastic surgery akata woldo ya ke aka ka sa nyin ku sabol ebe même fo ita killing itada munnela so fula nyam fana amel lanje wala ko nin tubabol be nyinindiro kele yentol doyande kaje ko ndolbe mantoro kolto nyanta menna wala ko keto noma ngako do soto e bulu wokola ni nga soto nga dina musola e ke la balu fenti ako jaha ayole fa so nsa long mbe nga lonko nyin kol be sujurin kodola anda aman nanje fanan ako tubabol membe tubabo imanta nyakarotado imalo membe jang itol be da dum nan kol to nyaadile melialo ngete be tubabu di malo ka preso lande ando ko la national assembly fanan ibe dunkan ka kolol ke invite kolto kana hakilol sunya ka kolbe feng ando isalon ko mol mete vote mete elect wala muso men tata nyakaro aneme man ta nyakaro muso men kera muslimode aneme man ke muslimode muso men lata adola aneme man ke adola so nite ko sign ite be tilinna wo muso melon kare lata adola ala dinola ibe happying ibe contenting pour yo muso ta ya solon kaswoto ye muso jorindi koto ite sign ila representation ila lonkango député ya kono ye lanno men dilere pour ye banjun represent ye foñi represent ye basse represent ye kiang represent ite la lanno mu munati ako nyinde nyinin kar dati député le kono so même je walen ko nyim ferol be membe lande fem mantara koma number 1 ilafta ko pour kana dino tinyam fulanya wonna aron na ciosano e malla fi nga bara sabanya o membe je walen ko e jututa ntol afrika musol bara sañ tubabol ye la nyakarota sotole me alon ko itol katoni nyiyandile malam falem faham janne ye la nyakarota sotole andi ka kele bare ka nyiyandile bare wol mel ka ke wolen ko momo melon kay nafulo soto wala ka tawo bundato andini tata bundato e ke jube ko ha nyi munyon tangolati baron tollata madama ila da dinola ila da ila adola e ke samma wala iboka fendi ngansim balla ako sa munem problemote ako labango fanan membi je wolen ko ay nyinin karo kele ay kiskisiro kele ala karango fana kele anene man na activisol nyinin ka gambe activisol musu juma le fata nyakaro tata musu juma le ma wuluno nyakaro tata musu juma le fana man dingo soro nyakaro tata musu juma le fana le bije meno ko na dinkin sodo anene ta soto la kodan aka jele ko melta nyakaro ka dingol men soto ata fanka surprise mo la ko ando kola ni ma o muso dema asi wuluno suwo kon akon na arna chosano aninna ya ni ayiwe na musu jamal ka wulu faye wato mela lobtanon man soto de bare sa lobtanon soto da annon jamal bije koytol man ta nyakaro dad ako boro wol franka batale wulu dunda so membe ye wala menje ko wolen ko kono wolen ko atebe lorine pour ka gambia musol africa musol anda men fo jaahaye ko isi murumuru la beto de bare Sierra Leone ndol bije en karantale nga longo kele andu nga kele andum fan to lañi aado abe Sierra Leone ne ndol ba kala bi mba kala sama isi dame ndo nyaal ku yesteje so même bi ye wolen ko ñennen ko molti fana melan ko ay même fo même be dende musola nyaakaro tara pour media fana sa ta ndol fanam be lori dame ndo nkana boje andun salon ko yarafa ñin fero lebe keri ya ñiñande baron dolla jang ya ti ñambulo jana ika kodole dundije baron dolla jang kodo buka dunje jana ika mantorol sotole ako bi masalan ay research do fanan kele kel men ka fa ni tara kel la sunnoto wala ka siya musol men ka fa ka même fo men ka fa musol men tata la ñakato tata ako bare say muna nayte parela pour ka je ko kel fanan kanata wulo kon bare yalo ne ko kele sembo sotole isi decision keno mote no la ke bali bare say nyatilindi musola e jutoto musola e horomonte atilindi musola ane ma muso horoma imam pare ke londi wala ne kana ando kola nyin kol be membe kundo ne na fulo soto do man ni ko leddi wo musola sañ itol membije itol ka jamal tala an ka kumo nyin sembentanda wasu kafo na kachata sanyi monni faabe gambia banko tubabol nga ko mune bondi la tubabo inata ja natara ko do tije bala dafa nata fonya ko ito la organisation membe nyin kelolo jama babe ko di nyinolla anon dal falam be sirine ka fo dole nata national assembly be sirin député iko ilafta pour ka bojoro dada pour ka musol nin kel imamol ke organize ke kachande musol nyin la koto kabiri yoke nkajaran ga ko kayto nyin dalafta menna aliya keje musola nyakarota alkana keje FGM sonkata musola banda mena ko ako honorable nimman FGM keje nte kodo sot la tubabul bulu akwa nimma FGA kodo kol keje bi kon nga lonne nga presre pour a fo ibaje ay ken tafana sadati ngko ko sa lafta men d'accord ta de ngata nga musol sesre FGM kodo sorry female circumcision sonko da all over 30 minutes mamben kanna akoya ko sa mbadu nga fo membi jeba nimman FGM keje report kayto me men savela tubabol te kodo dila molla ngoy ko nga ko sa fahamta ala keje ndenga sada sotole memem fola moliye woto nyinnen koldi melan ko fa mem ka diamu atonyata ko kono annun se mem fo atoliye hanne ata ndefata dole be nderam place la imam fade na fata dole baraba ni awanyo atol mero nal fata dole bije men barra place khalifa nyol fan men fata dole bije men be wol remplacer la annun tolte murla ko mabbi nde murla ko ma sama woto kontante baake ala nala mbe siya fana konton anen jonali solo mbijang nyinna ala kumo fenkeda bare nga summarize yale atan fanan anen kuyeta na ala fudala safo inshallah rabbi so natara the journalists also you may have anything to ask the floor is open then from there we can close with prayers inshallah yes so the ball is all yours the journalists if you have the professor Sia is open.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله te me ala tentula folo man saba man sakallanki o man so mi alon kala kiti kan tol benta jam o ko lambe sallan na kunti ba min kete kila Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam annabi o mi yalon ko ninga no man neta filla do to bande ngan ko di yalan si filo mi yalon ko ten genol o ko la mbama nyol mi be sirin janto anin na lon taw mi yalon ko anata janto anin na honorable anin na baadi mo filasini tembe be konto na muslimi ala control ndrol mi yalon ko assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh te ntolu kontanta bakele pour nyimbe ngo kan kumandi nan kana be nyimbe si fara jam nyimmin na reten dina tan tolle ma koy bar nyimmu nyamalu balti nyimmu nyebala falti Gambia nyimmanke ko ka foko ko ni association card amane tamni bar nyimmu 95% muslim Gambia mbere tamu nyinti eda ike dino nyi ka sopolle be ka so bar madame wuluta nyi l'islam wala kono idabe nyi kelo kono kane dabo ndije woto nyimmiru na da kan tol ma koy jani nañu honorable min fere sinen janton tol man fen so fo jerejef anim fulan jango ka foko ke wolle ka diam ni na fo musolti jemina mbe jele mbarni aje musol bu kadi amuñu bunda to baken tol malutale anim fulan jang fo annabi yo muso soto tale bang amon soto woto nin ke wollo ta membaro kay di yamu tangi na wakan tol kono faade o kay tan dinal ka fa al sabati ke wol yal wasare ntol min nyuta kanyan no min yaron ko